Joining me right now, GOP political strategist, also co-founder of MustReadTexas.com, Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Chad. I'm doing great. Good morning.
Thanks for coming on today. A lot going on out there, but one of the stories that keeps appearing is, Governor Rick Perry. He's out talking to a lot of conservative groups. He's out making his case about why he should be considered for 2016 and about why, in particular, governors should be supported in 2016. And almost all the stories I read, finish that paragraph that they write about with an apparent swipe at Senator Ted Cruz when he's talking about all senators, the debate governors versus senators in 2016. Do you anticipate Ted Cruz and Rick Perry having a big battle during this primary, or because both are pretty well liked in Texas and overall they're going to be sort of nice to each other? How do you see this developing?
That's a good question. Presuming obviously they both run and they both get to the debate phase of the Republican primary, which starts, I want to say, in August, but it might certainly end by September. Look, I think that the fact that the two of them know each other, people forget that Ted Cruz introduced Rick Perry when he announced for president in Charleston at Red State Gathering in August of 2011, and he did so, with a very positive introduction. Look, I think they trust and respect each other, and so far Cruz has not really said anything negative about Perry, and even what Perry has said is really not that negative either.
Right.
It's just more about, the advantages of being a governor compared to being a senator. So, could I envision a scenario where if they get pushed, in a debate setting, that they really, go after each other, perhaps, but I don't know that I necessarily see that happening at all, or if it does, not for quite a while.
Yeah, it just seems as though some of the print media out there really wants it to happen. They really want a Rick Perry versus Ted Cruz throwdown for whatever reason. I think mainly probably to hurt Cruz because this is realistically this is probably it for Rick Perry. And then this is one more time to run and he's done. Ted Cruz has the whole future ahead of him.
Yeah, I think there's something to that, but I would also say that, I think that Jeb Bush and Chris Christie are likely to take the most sort of incoming, I think, from other candidates. And, I could see someone like Christie, giving as good as he gets, right? And so I could see him perhaps going after somebody like Cruz, perhaps on something like the Hurricane Sandy emergency funding or the government shutdown or something like that. So I do think Cruz is gonna take a lot of incoming at these debates, but I don't necessarily think Perry's going to be the one that's doing that the most.
Visiting with Matt Mackowiak. Let me ask you something. I know it's still real early on, but you had Governor Perry announce, what was it, last week, that he had over 80 bundlers or 80 donors, large donors, ready to go forward on a campaign, which is pretty impressive. And I think it was the Washington Post that they seemed pretty impressed by that in their writing. Is there enough money to go around for all these top-tier candidates who are wanting to run?
Yeah, I mean, the Perry list was very impressive. I mean, not only has he, held, half or more than half of the really top people in Texas, but he's also really expanded that team, well beyond to some very, very big names across the country. To your question about is there enough money to go around, the bottom line answer is no. If you do have, I can put a list of 8 candidates who I think are in the first tier this time, and that wouldn't even include probably Ben Carson or Rick Santorum or Carly Fiorina or some others. There's not going to be enough money for 8 candidates. If you need to raise $30 to $35 million this calendar year, that much money's not there. And Jeb Bush is likely to perhaps be closer to $100 million. I think Christie will do very well and could be north of $50 million this year. The more they raise, the less these other candidates will raise. And so at the end of the day, there's not going to be enough money. There are going to be some candidates that raise, between $5 and $10 or $12 million, and they're having a really tough time competing with candidates that have 3 times that much. So the fundraising piece is going to winnow the field probably well before Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina.
Visiting with Matt Mackowiak. Matt, taking a look at what's going on down in Austin. Story over the weekend about Greg Abbott and the differences between Greg Abbott and Rick Perry, and how they were handling Democrats. And there are some Democrats and some it looks like reporters that are surprised that Greg Abbott is handling things differently and reaching out more towards Democrats. There's a difference, obviously, between Abbott and Perry. They're two totally, they're two different guys. They probably agree on much of the same issues. But what are some of the differences you anticipate that people will see from a Greg Abbott than what we saw from Rick Perry?
Yeah, look, I do think that would be a consensus builder as governor. He's not someone who has a record of trying to score political points or really using, cheap shots or something like that. He really, in fact, hasn't been all that integrated up at the Texas Capitol. The Attorney General, every session will have a couple issues they're trying to push on, deadbeat dads or law enforcement funding or something like that. But it's pretty limited. So his profile at the Capitol was fairly low. Meanwhile, Perry was obviously a very, well-known commodity up at the Capitol, having served in the House, having served at the statewide level as agriculture commissioner and lieutenant governor, and then governor for a long time. And Perry does like partisan fights, and he does like sticking up for Republicans and sticking it to Democrats. So, I think Abbott really wants a smooth first session, and he's going to give a state of the state address here in a couple of weeks, kind of almost a little bit late in the process. So, I think he's someone who wants to really, see his agenda get through, and that's transportation. And, he said he'd veto any budget that doesn't have business tax cuts in it. So, we'll see. I think, he could have gone in a very partisan direction, given that we have, roughly 60% of the House and 60% of the Senate in Republican hands. But I think a lot of this has to do with the Hispanic outreach he did in the Valley in the campaign. He wants to continue to win Democratic votes and continue to be someone Democrats can do business with when their principles align.
This is Matt Mackowiak, GOP political strategist, also co-founder, mustreadtexas.com. Matt, what are you putting up on the website today, and what are you looking forward to this week as far as some Texas news?
Yeah, kind of a mishmash of things up right now. Story about Will Hurd, the freshman congressman from San Antonio, who's already started running for re-election in a tough district from the San Antonio Express News. That story's up. A lot of coverage of Perry and Cruz. Cruz was on the ABC and CNN Sunday shows over the weekend from Munich, Germany, from the security conference. So some information about that up there. And, this week, another legislative session. You now have committees in the House and you have committees in the Senate. So I think you're going to start seeing a lot more legislative activity at the Capitol in Austin. You can follow all the news at mustreadtexas.com.
All right. As always, Matt, thank you very much. Have a good weekend. Or a good week. I don't know. I'm already on Friday for some reason.
There you go.
I'm wanting to skip ahead. Have a good one, Matt. You can follow him on Twitter at Matt Mackowiak.